Listen to your favorite shows live and on demand 24/7. Download the 77 WABC mobile app now. Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Katsimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Katsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Breaking news, WABC.
Well, a lot of breaking news today, and
what a day!
And things are happening. It looks like all the prisoners in Russia are being released, and we had on the Wall Street Journal before, and we're going to be playing it back in the next few minutes.
Yeah, we're going to be talking to Gerard Baker. John, this is enormous news. Evan Gerskovich, the Wall Street Journal reporter, he has been held for 16 months. Also, former Marine Paul Whelan, who's been 4.5 years in a Russian penal colony. They and two others are coming home. The question is, what did Russia get in return? Obviously, we're hearing dozens of prisoners are getting out. It's a huge deal. They're supposed to touch ground, by the way, on American soil in a matter of hours, John. And I'm happy, so happy they're coming home, at least in America.
And the other big story, we have the Pennsylvania song.
In Pennsylvania, we'd never be the same again.
Wow.
Well, Pennsylvania, it looks like it's going to be Josh Shapiro.
Yep, the governor there of Pennsylvania.
He canceled the stories around. He canceled all his fundraising for the weekend.
For Kamala, potential VP, you're talking.
And, I would never nobody would ever cancel his fundraisers for the weekend unless he was doing the big one with Kamala on Tuesday in Philadelphia.
I know, it looks like it. And listen, he's an impressive guy, an interesting background.
But there's a last-ditch effort by extreme progressives to stop him from being the nominee.
Because, explain why, Judge.
Because he's of the Jewish faith, and the progressives do not buy in to having a Jew on the ticket.
Wow, that's interesting. Ed Cox.
Harris's sold that moment.
Hold on a second. We don't have your mic on. Here, go ahead, Ed. Go ahead right now.
This can be...
His still mic is not on. Why isn't his mic on?
Yeah, Ed, I'm not sure what's going on. Let's go have you grab another mic here, Ed.
So
there you go.
This is Harris's sold that moment when she can do something to say, "Hey, I'm not a progressive."
Jews. Some of my best friends are Jewish.
But you know what it says? It also says she was clearly worried about Michigan, Minnesota. We always talk about that being her two-state solution.
Well, you heard it first on WABC. It looks like it's Josh Shapiro for vice president with Kamala.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, John, about the fundraising, because that is obviously a telltale sign. Some people thought maybe it's too obvious.
Tuesday
in
Philadelphia.
Tuesday in Philly, and then she goes to other swing states. This is going to be, wow, interesting stuff. Well, you guys, we have with us now former UN Ambassador John Bolton joins us now here on Katz and Cosby. Ambassador Bolton, let's get first to this enormous news of this hostage swap that took place with the Biden administration for Evan Gerskovich, famous Wall Street Journal reporter, and also Paul Whelan, former Marine. I'm so glad. I'll tell you, I cried when I heard that they were coming home. But obviously, you got to wonder, what did Russia get in return, and what is Putin up to?
Right. Well, look, for the families, for the former kidnapped victims, which is what they were before and now released, and their families, you can't wish anything but the best. It's a very, very happy moment. From the U.S. perspective, though, this is not a terribly good deal. We have exchanged 3 completely innocent Americans for convicted murderers, KGB agents, and other people that Vladimir Putin very much wanted back in Russia. And, you know, I'm still going through the numbers of people released. Basically, 8 prisoners, including the KGB agent who had been convicted of murder in Germany. 8 Russians returned, 3 Americans released by Russia, and then 13 other prisoners released by Russia, of whom 7 are Russian dissidents being exiled from Russia, in effect. And 3 are joint German-Russian citizens, a total of, and 3 other German citizens. So 6 Germans, 3 of whom are also Russian citizens, in effect, those being exiled as well. So Germany got, because Germany was holding the Vadim Krasikov, the KGB agent that Putin most wanted, they got a lot of people out from their perspective. But I think the big winner here is Putin and the Russians, and also the loss, once again, of the principle articulated by Ronald Reagan that you don't trade hostages for hostages, because every time you do it, you put a price on an American's head.
We have the Wall Street Journal gentleman coming on right after you, Ambassador. And the first question I'm going to ask him is, are you sending more Wall Street Journal reporters to Moscow?
Yeah, look, this is criminal behavior by the Russians, but it's the sort of thing the Iranians do. It feeds into terrorist groups who see that in the Biden administration, more than any other in recent history, we've been willing to swap bodies for bodies, and that tells anybody that has a problem. If you want to help solve it, grab some Americans. And let me just also point out, at least by, I think it's the count in several media sources, there are still 8 Americans held in Russia. So we got 3 out. That's great, but 8 more are still there. And if Putin needs more bargaining chips, a few more people, innocent people in Russia for whatever reason, are very vulnerable. And it's a signal around the world. The Biden administration's in the bazaar. They're ready to trade. That's not what Ronald Reagan did.
Yeah, absolutely. Judge Weinberg.
Mr. Ambassador, good to talk to you again. But I'm deeply troubled by these hostage grabs and the paying, whether you pay in bodies or you pay in cash. And I think one of the big mistakes the Israelis made, for one soldier, they gave in excess of 1,000 people, some of whom were the plotters and the schemers for the October 7th attack. You pay a real price, whether in the present or in the future, by allowing this to go on. What are your thoughts?
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, when a government like Russia kidnaps an American and puts them in jail, the signal ought to be you don't get back into civilized society internationally until that person is released. And economic sanctions are possible. Let me just say here, I think we need real economic sanctions. I think we need to take the sanctions function away from the Treasury Department and put it in the Defense Department, where they know how to wage that kind of campaign. Sanctions are announced, politicians say they're great, and then they're just not enforced effectively. So we've got to make the sanctions bite harder. And with that, anybody who thinks that snatching Americans is going to be good for them, they need to understand our price to exchange for an American is 0. You comply or you're going to feel pain. That's the transaction.
Yeah, and they didn't hear that today. Ed Cox.
Yeah, look, that's the only way we got the POWs home from Vietnam, by ordering the December bombing that bombed right near the homes of the leaders of North Vietnam. They said, okay, we'll return your prisoners, and we got them back. I mean, in the end, it's only force that does it. And this shows that the Biden administration thinks politically. It's all about having the warm homecoming and the celebration and all that. They're going to play that up. And this is a time when they need that little political lift for Harris.
Well, it's certainly convenient timing, and a real coincidence is just a few weeks before the Democratic convention. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is.
Exactly.
By the way, my father was a prisoner of war, as you may know, Ambassador Bolton, and so I am delighted to see that they are coming home. But to the point, they need to feel strength. And here, I just heard our President Biden, just a little bit ago, was asked, "What's your message to abductee nations, to these people that are taking Americans?" And his response was, well, Americans shouldn't be traveling to these countries. And reporters were kind of looking stunned. They were waiting for him to say, don't you ever touch the hair of an American. How dangerous is that, hearing that message? It sounds very weak today.
Well, I think it is. And I think if you're in Iran, or if you're a terrorist proxy of Iran or a terrorist group anywhere in the world, you know that the cost of that blue passport that Americans carry is something that is very valuable to you. And let me just emphasize also that what happened today is very different than exchanges of prisoners of war where you're trading like for like, or spy exchanges like the ones at the Glenica Bridge during the Cold War, spy for spy. This is an innocent American reporter and two others for convicted criminals. And it shows that what it gives Putin is not just getting these people back and perhaps protected from further interrogation. It's saying to his killers and thugs, if you go out on assignment by the Russian Federation, we will never forget. We will get you back. So it emboldens people that we don't want to give them any more incentive than they already have, and yet that's what we just did.
Yeah, no question about it. Before I let you go, what a juxtaposition from the way Israel's been handling things of late. I mean, Israel's been going after, so far we're hearing they've taken out 4 now major leaders, with Hamas, Hezbollah, and also the Iran Revolutionary Guard. That's extraordinary. And yet we're sort of looking like we're bystanders, if you will.
Yeah, it's a magnificent operation by Israel, particularly to kill Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas political leader, in a supposedly secure compound in Tehran. And what a signal that sends to all of Tehran's terrorist proxies that you're not even safe in the capital city. So we'll see what Iran does in response here. But I hope if they do something significant, it certainly sounds like they're going to. That's what they're boasting they're going to do. This time, Israel should not respond the way the White House insisted it did when 320 drones and missiles were fired against Israel. This time, it's Iran that needs to feel pain. That is the only language they understand.
Yeah, that is true. Wow, wow, wow. Well, thank you so much. Ambassador John Bolton, we so appreciate you being here on such a big, busy news day. Thank you.
Glad to be with you.
Thank you. And John, dialing in just a second, we're going to be talking to the head of the Wall Street Journal to get
I'd
his
like to
take.
ask him that question.
Breaking news, WABC.
And joining us now on this enormous breaking news is Gerard Baker, the editor-at-large of the Wall Street Journal. Gerard, to find out that your journalist, Evan Gershkovich, is coming home at any moment, what was the reaction? We were so emotional and so happy for you.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Obviously, it's a great day. My colleagues at the Wall Street Journal are in, as you can imagine, a combination of joy and relief and gratitude and celebration. My colleagues in the newsroom, indeed across the whole of Dow Jones, the whole organization, which is also, must be said, has worked very, very hard over the last 18 months, nearly 16 months to. For the release of this innocent man, a journalist simply doing his job in prison completely unjustly. A lot of work has been done by everybody down from the chief executive of Dow Jones to the editor of the Wall Street Journal, all Evan's colleagues, the people he's worked with, put in a tremendous amount of hard work. Keeping, one of the most important things in this reason is to keep attention fixed on people when these injustices occur. And everyone's worked very hard. So the mood today is one of great celebration. We don't forget, of course, as well, the importance of the others who were released and great joy for them and for their family. I should also say, obviously, Evan's family, who have worked incredibly hard and have just been a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful model of strength through all of this. So, yeah, it's a great day of celebration. Everybody at the Journal and Dow Jones is deeply, deeply joy-filled.
John Catsimatidis here. Now, what is the Wall Street Journal going to do in the future? Does that mean we don't send any more reporters into Russia, or do we?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's a tough question. Obviously, I have to say straight up, it's not my decision. I used to be the editor-in-chief. I'm no longer involved in those decisions anymore. I'm glad to say I'm merely a writer. But of course, you've got to balance the importance of getting the story, of being able to do good journalism, important journalism, in one of the most important countries in the world currently, especially with the war going on in Ukraine. You've got to be able to give readers and give the world the information about what's going on. But of course, you've got to balance that against the safety and the security of your reporters. And again, it's not my decision, but that consideration will be made. And look, I think one of the unfortunate, even on a day when we're celebrating here, we do realize that this, unfortunately, is the way that Vladimir Putin operates and the way that some of these regimes do operate. They seize completely innocent people essentially as a hostage, as a kind of bargaining chip, right? And he's got what he wanted out of this deal today. we're obviously delighted for the release of the Americans involved in this, but he's got what he wanted with his release of this convicted killer from Germany, and that's always so that is always a risk. You always have to weigh that very carefully. The risk that your reporters could be put in harm's way like that against the importance of doing the job. Again, it's not my decision, but I'm sure this is a consideration that will be very carefully reviewed over the coming weeks and months.
I understand he's on his way back to America. Has anybody talked to him? Was he treated well?
As far as I know, again, I'm not directly involved in the discussions. There's some fascinating reporting on the Wall Street Journal website, which I encourage your listeners to read. It does seem as though, don't know how he was treated while he was incarcerated, but he looked we've seen the videos of him leaving Russian custody. We've seen those lovely pictures of him with the other Americans, with the American flag, obviously very happy. His family are very happy. I know his family have been in Washington today. Obviously, they were there for the announcement with President Joe Biden. They've been in touch with him. We'll have to see. I can't speak. We'll have to see this. And an ordeal like this obviously has tremendous mental and even for a young, fit man like him, even perhaps physical consequences. And everybody will be anxious to see him and the other hostages too, which is what they are, hostages, see how they have reacted to all that and how they adjust. But everything we've seen there for the last 16 months, when we've had those glimpses of him in the courtroom, when we've heard the letters that he's written to his family, to his parents, he seems to be in incredibly good spirits. And let me just tell you, John, I say, and this is a good example, and you can read this in the Wall Street Journal reporting today, the very last thing he had to do in order to make this deal go through, he had to write a letter to President Putin asking essentially for a pardon, for a presidential pardon, which is the standard procedure here. And there's a box where he's on the form that he has to, the prisoner has to fill in, where he's entitled to say a few things. And he wrote in fluent Russian, because of course he's a Russian speaker. He wrote asking for the pardon in fluent Russian, and at the end he said, President Putin, and when this is over, perhaps you'd be able to give me an interview.
I love that. Love it.
I think that probably shows what kind of spirit, what kind of resilience he has. So very good for him.
Bravo. That is really beautiful. That says it. Journalist to the end. Well, we are so happy for you. We're going to have tears in our eyes when he hits American soil at any moment. Gerard Baker with the Wall Street Journal. We are so thrilled for you and everybody there. Bravo, 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 and how wonderful Evan and these others are coming home.
Thank you for your support. Thank you for your kindness. And, it's a great day. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow. And again, they're going to be hitting American soil at any moment. Can you imagine coming into Andrews Air Force Base, coming home after, I cannot imagine what they've gone through. You love the Putin line.
Well, you think how professional Evan was, and then you compare it to the interviewer at the black journalist thing who just threw all professionalism aside in her questions to Donald Trump.
That was terrible.
It was terrible.
She didn't even say hi.
Yeah,
she didn't even say hi to him.
No,
I didn't watch it, so you tell me.
It's first of all, here is the president of the United States, the former president, likely the future president. I don't care however you feel politically. He's the president. You give the president respect. And she didn't even ask him a question, John. She goes right to it and said, well, let's get right to the question in the room, the elephant in the room. She said, you're terrible essentially to black people. And why are you here? And he looked at her and said, hello, can you say hi? I'm the president. Is that the way you introduce me? That's the way she started the discussion. I thought it was terrible.
And by the way, he even got some applause from the audience.
Yes,
from that audience.
The audience was like, yeah, I'm telling you, people watch that and say bravo to him. I was cheering him on.
That's an ABC reporter who was completely unprofessional in the way she did that interview.
And also, Ed, that is the network that is supposed to be doing the debate that he and Kamala Harris are talking about potentially in September.
I think they may not be doing that debate. ABC may not be doing it.
I was going to say after that, I think there's a lot of questions. If I were him, I'd say, I don't think I'll do it if this is your journalist. She didn't even say hi to him.
And they're not even going to discipline her for that?
Disgraceful.
Why should they discipline her?
Yeah, you're saying that's par for the course.
What do you expect from them?
I talked to David Patterson, and I asked him today on that expression. What is it? DEI?
DEI.
I don't even know what it stands for.
Diversity, equity, inclusion.
Right.
And what does it mean?
Exactly.
Because I don't
That's
think
what
the
it
American
means.
people know what it means. And somebody had told me it's that before you hire anybody, you have to hire a black person. I mean, I don't know that.
No, what it means.
I think you have to hire somebody that's qualified.
Or a
Absolutely.
transgender person, or something.
What it's come out to be is simply this: instead of equality of opportunity, it's equal results. Okay, and so whatever you have to do to get equal results, you do it. So if you have to discriminate against everybody else, get the equal results for the favorite group you're trying to protect. That's what DEI is.
Well, you know what's interesting? This was RUDE. This was rude yesterday. And I say that as a journalist. I've interviewed a lot of people, and you always show somebody in that kind of a position respect. And they would never treat Kamala Harris the way they did, John. And that's why it was disgraceful. They're going to fed all over her. And yet Donald Trump comes there. But I think he got some points. I agree with you, Ed.
Oh, yeah.
Because the audience started cheering for him because it was so blatant.
Let's go to a break, Rita, and we're going to come back. And I understand that you can get bonuses from China for shipping extra fentanyl to America. Is a bonus for killing more Americans?
How
Let's take that break.
Janine Pirro here for Colonial Metals Group. Colonial Metals Group helps Americans protect their future with the most trusted store of wealth in human history, physical gold and silver. If you're retiring or retired, go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Pirro for your free Janine Pirro Colonial Metals Group Retirement Protection Kit, or call 800-965-8004. 800-965-8004 now to receive a free home safe and up to $7,500 in free silver.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. We're going to be talking shortly to Tom Homan, the former director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They just had the biggest fentanyl bust ever in Border Patrol history. 4 million fentanyl pills. Think about just the disaster.
How many people you can kill with that kind of...
At least 4 million people.
Right. Oh, listen, and I'll tell you what's worse. As reported in National Review, it's not that China is failing to police it to stop the export. They're actually subsidizing the companies in China to export it.
So
understand what that means.
They're paying those companies to kill more Americans.
Why are they doing it? It doesn't make it kill your customers. It can't be a commercial thing. So why are they doing it?
It's not business.
What about destroy America?
It's about right.
Exactly.
It's the business of killing America.
Well, and joining us now is Tom Homan, the former Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director. Tom, great to have you back here on the show, Tom. First off, this enormous bust. We were just saying 4 million fentanyl pills found on the Arizona border. It's the biggest in CBP, Customs and Border Protection history, and it weighed 1,000 pounds. I mean, talk about what that would have done to America.
Well, look, law enforcement is doing a great job. They're seizing a lot. The problem is they're seizing a lot means a lot's getting away. So, we got over 200,000 fentanyl overdose deaths. This open borders is feeding it. So, God bless the men and women on the front line. They're doing the best they can. But, the Biden administration wants to take a policy, like we're seizing most of it. That is just ridiculous. I've been in law enforcement for 3 decades. If you're seizing a lot, that means a lot's out there. So, and the deaths keep rising. Look, those who died from fentanyl this fiscal year is already surpassed last fiscal year. We still got a couple months left to go. So, this isn't getting better. No one's holding Mexico accountable. No one's holding China accountable. Nothing. This administration has not done a thing to get China to stop, producing the precursors that make this poison.
Who do they favor more, Iran or China? I mean, I hate to make jokes like that.
I've said it many times. President Trump made America great again. Joe Biden's made China great again.
And Iran.
China,
they made Iran zillionaires again.
They're poisoning this country. They're destroying this country between what they've done with the fentanyl, stealing our technology. Look at over 30,000 Chinese mail across the border in 1 year. If this is a national security concern, 30,000 Chinese males military age just don't leave China without permission of China. So the government of China is deep involved in all these tens of thousands come to the United States, and people got to ask themselves, name a bigger national security issue than that.
Ed Cox.
Tom, do those Chinese military age males who are in good shape, do we track them? Do we follow where they go, what they're doing?
No, unless there's derogatory information that's done during the vetting. And here's the problem with the vetting. Most terrorists in this world aren't in any database, right? Unless they're encountered on a battlefield by DOD and they take a retina scan, or unless they're involved with a T3 undercover JTTF operation, we don't know who most terrorists even are. And do you think, and we only vet people against information that's available to us, like NCIC and III and some other, terrorist databases. But does anybody think China's going to share any national security information with us? No. Do you think Russia's going to share any national security information? Exactly. No. And Afghanistan the same way. It's like all these people they brought from Afghanistan, the so-called, bringing all these Afghanistan people that helped the military, and they brought them in by a bunch of those, all these refugees. Where do they get the information and vet them in? Because the terrorist organizations runs Afghanistan now. They're in charge. You think they're going to share national security information with us? No. The vetting procedure is weak at best.
I want to ask you, Tom, too, about my jaw dropped when I saw it was a Kamala Harris ad that came out talking about how great she's been on the border.
And stronger than Trump.
I mean, is there anybody who's buying this? And firsthand, is there any truth to that whatsoever?
No. We went for the most secure border in my lifetime. Illegal immigration at a 45-year low. And they unsecure the border on purpose, it wasn't mismanagement, it wasn't incompetence. They ran on open border. You got to give them credit; they kept their promise. But we went from the most secure border in history to historic, never seen before in numbers. Now the story you're pushing right now. I'm writing an op-ed. I got the pen in my hand. I put it down to talk to you all. I'm writing an op-ed right now to talk about the false narrative that President Trump shut down legislation, the Senate border bill that would have fixed the border, and he didn't do it because he wanted to make it an election issue. Let's be clear on the facts here. First of all, who shut down what? The Democrats shut down H.R. 2 long before anybody talked about the Senate bill. And not only did they shut it down, at least the Senate bill, Republicans talked about it with them, but on the H.R. 2 bill, Chuck Schumer, after it passed the House, Chuck Schumer wouldn't put it on the floor for discussion. He wouldn't put it on the floor for a vote. So who shut down what? And the reason President Trump pushed back on the Senate bill, because he's not an idiot. Anybody that reads that bill, especially page 114 and 116, if you think that bill would fix the border, then you're an idiot. So people that think that bill will fix the border either didn't read it or they're just plain stupid. President Trump is not going to negotiate against no success. H.R. 2, we know it worked. We know it would work. Why? Because most of it was Trump's policies. We already proved it's going to work. So why would the president or anybody negotiate against known success? We wouldn't.
H.R. 2 really shut down the border, but this legislation that supposedly Trump stopped, millions would have come in under that legislation that was permitted, and that's assuming that would be enforced by Biden, who doesn't enforce it at all. So
exactly, they would allow 1.8 million at the minimum.
It would be ratifying illegal conduct, Tom. That's what that bill would have done. It would have said it's just swell. Let all these illegals in, and you're ratifying lawless conduct by this administration.
5,000 entries a day is okay with them, and that's 1.8 million a year. Not only that, the bill did nothing about child trafficking. It did nothing about female sex trafficking, and families and children were kept out of it. So child trafficking was still skyrocket. Sex trafficking was still skyrocket. And 5,000 a day before we took any steps to secure the border. Why 5,000? Why not one? Why not one? That's true border security.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thomas Homan, thank you so much for everything you do for America and continue to speak out for America. And we'll catch up with you again real soon.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And let's go to the top news of the day, Rita. sponsored by Goya.
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
Well, some interesting news coming from a New York appeals court, John. It has rejected former President Trump's appeal to lift a gag order that restricts his public statements after being convicted of falsifying business records. The gag order bans Trump from speaking publicly about the court staff, prosecutors, and their families. And the decision by the panel of judges says the order can stay in place through Trump's sentencing, which is in September, but we'll see if that ever happens. Also, as we've been talking about at the top of the show here on Katz and Cosby, lawmakers are celebrating the release of Americans jailed in Russia, but are raising concerns about prisoner swaps. House Foreign Affairs Chairman Michael McCaul says he was thrilled that Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich and others are free, but he also worries that it encourages future hostage taking. And we were talking about this at the top of the show, John. 6 potential running mates are being considered by Vice President Kamala Harris. They include a number of others, but it looks like, as we were saying, all signs are pointing at this point to Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. And those are the hot headlines of the day.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. And joining us now is former New York Congressman Lee Zeldin. Boy, oh boy, he had an amazing gubernatorial race. And Lee, there is so much to get started with you. We were just talking with Tom Homan about the border and sort of all of these different, like, sort of flip-flopping by Kamala Harris. You know, on one hand, you have her on videotape saying everybody come one, come all. And then now she's saying she's tough on the border. You have her saying, oh, I'm tough on crime. I'm a prosecutor. And then you see her supporting the Minnesota Freedom Fund, which bailed out the rioters. Will the real Kamala Harris stand up, right?
Well, it's great to be with you, and absolutely. And what is even crazier than that is how many in the media are circling the wagons to help her get away with it. Her position on camera is that she wants to ban fracking, but her allies want to help make sure that she gets into the White House, that she wins Pennsylvania. So late this past Friday, somebody on her team tells some reporter that she's changed her position. So then that will get reported out, and then if anybody wants to say that Kamala Harris wants to ban fracking, it comes now with formal fact checks. We saw it with the Borders Czar piece. I was on CNN. I referenced it. David Axelrod was sitting across the table, and he immediately said, no, that's not true. She was never the Borders Czar. And while that was a surprise to hear, that was the first time that I heard it, we had a back and forth. What was wild about that, though, was the next morning in Axios, a reporter writes a story saying that President Trump and his allies are not telling the truth when they say that Kamala Harris was the border czar. Well, it turns out not only did Axios report in the spring of 2021 that Kamala Harris was the border czar, it was the same reporter. So I think voters are going to have to be really smart to what we're seeing, not just out of Kamala Harris, but her allies.
Wow, the same reporter. And just like you said, it's got to do the fact checking. You know, I want to also get your reaction to the fact, obviously, as a New Yorker, I'll tell you, I was so upset to hear that there was a plea deal with the 9/11 mastermind. Your thoughts, Lee? I mean, come on, we shouldn't be negotiating. There should be no plea deals with the guy who encouraged Osama bin Laden and helped fund it.
There is no greater example of somebody deserving of the death penalty than Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of 9/11, all of the death that came with it, the suffering, the pain, the treasure lost, the limbs that were lost afterwards in the years and the decades to follow. But specifically on September 11, 2001, on the largest attack that's ever happened on our homeland, it's something that for me, my life, it really has been separated into two parts. I'm 44 years old. Almost half of it is before 9/11, almost half after. It changed my life. It changed a lot of lives of New Yorkers and others, a lot more than it changed mine because they lost a loved one. The justice that they deserved was the death penalty, period, end of story. There should be no negotiations for anything less.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to me, it's shocking. Why would you ever negotiate with somebody who and the families lead, the 9/11 families said that they were not consulted. They feel outraged and they feel cheapened. I mean, they wanted to see this guy brought to justice. They wanted to see a trial. They wanted to look at his face.
And they're right for feeling the way they do. They're entitled to whatever emotion, pain, opinion that they have with regards to how this played out. It's an injustice. There's no other way to spin it. What the appropriate punishment is in this case is the death penalty, and you can't convince me otherwise.
Yeah, Congressman Lee Zeldin, I want to ask you about also this news we were just talking about at the top here, that it looks like, I mean, you never know till you know, but it looks like Josh Shapiro, the tea leaves are kind of pointing, the Pennsylvania governor probably is going to be the pick for Kamala Harris. She's got a rally in Pennsylvania on Tuesday. What are your thoughts about that? It's interesting because Judge Weinberg was talking about how some progressives are up in arms because he's a Jewish American.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of outrage inside of Michigan. Rashida Tlaib and her allies out of Dearborn. But at the same time, Josh Shapiro in many ways already is far left in many other ways. He might be Jewish, and that for some reason inside the Democratic Party is a cause for attack by some. But on top of it, as we're all witnessing the Olympics, where we just saw a man beating up on a woman inside of a ring as they compete for Olympic gold, Josh Shapiro is the one who's out there saying trans women are women. Now, there's a lot of issues that are important. For parents who are out there, they care about this issue. In New York, Proposition 1 is going to be on the ballot this November. It was pushed through by Albany Democrats. It's something that amends the state constitution, and it would create a protected right for men and boys to be able to compete against girls, to use their bathrooms, to be able to change inside of their locker rooms. There are a lot of issues that are important to us. We care about the border. We care about the economy, energy independence, foreign policy, and all of that should be vetted. What the Democrats have done here in switching out the top of their ticket after 14 million people cast their vote for Joe Biden is something that outrages a lot of people who are strong, loyal supporters of Joe Biden. But on top of it, what's most important for America is that there's a full vetting. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what's going to decide this election is going to be a choice for president. And Kamala Harris, she's avoiding the tough questions. She won't do the tough press conferences, and she only will debate if the left is setting the terms of how that debate should be set. So I think that we need to make sure that Americans who care about these issues, that so many of them that are important to them, that they get that vetting that they deserve so that they can make an informed decision on which way our country goes from here. Absolutely. Judge Weinberg.
Going back to that piece of legislation that's going to be on the ballot in November here in New York, it's a consumer fraud, Lee, because they're vetting it and narrating it as somehow it's an equal rights amendment. It's not an equal rights amendment. It's carrying forth an agenda for transgender, and that's a very big deal, and people need to know that. Right. When our rights come in conflict with the right of the person who identifies as trans, what this is saying is that the person who identifies as trans is the superior, that's the superior race, the superior being, the superior gender. So that's an issue for a lot of New Yorkers, but it's not even just that. It covers other issues. There are concerns about the language as it relates to national origin, as we've seen inside of New York City, where they passed a law to give people who are legally in our country the right to vote, and that was challenged in court. It continues to be challenged. There is a push that we're seeing in other municipalities in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere to try to give a right to vote to people who are illegally here. We see rights beyond that. So what does that mean? And there's a lot of concern that if this ends up passing in November and you amend the Constitution and you provide this protected right based on national origin, that the sanctuary city and sanctuary state policies we have in the right to vote are going to be expanded and protected. So all of these concerns need to be vetted out. And you're absolutely right, Judge, where they're trying to brand this. In some cases, they're trying to say that this is an amendment that's all about abortion. You're not going to find the word abortion
in the language that was passed by the legislature, and you're not going to find it on the ballot in November. It's important for voters to understand that it's a whole lot more than what the left is claiming it is.
And Ed Cox, real quick.
Lee, your race for governor was tremendously important in our winning 11 congressional races here in New York and a majority in the House of Representatives. How do you think this California progressive Harris is going to have an impact here in New York in those congressional races at the top of the ticket?
She has a long record of being supportive of tax policies that are proposed up to 70-80%. We're just talking about her push for banning fracking. We were just talking about trans rights. The list goes on. She is to the left of Joe Biden, and inside of these suburban House districts that are battleground districts, this isn't the far left, deeply blue New York that we get defined on, often around the rest of the country. But if you think that all of New York is deeply blue, you're greatly mistaken. And in these districts, you have there was 6 House Republican freshmen elected in 2022 in districts that Joe Biden won. You have a lot of competitive seats. There's opportunities to go on offense. New York 3, where Mike LaPetri is running. New York 18, where Allison Esposito is running. And if we campaign hard, we take nothing for granted, we're a strong team, we raise the resources, we have the volunteers, and everyone gets out and votes, not only can we maintain the House Republican delegation we have in the state, we can grow it.
All right. Well, Lee Zeldin, thank you very, very, very much. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Lee. Keep up the good fight. Thank you. Guys. And we have Dr. Peter Michalos.
Let's go to Dr. Peter Michalos right now. And I was terrified this morning. I was shocked. Some of the dark chocolate we're eating might not be good for us.
Oh, no.
I love dark chocolate.
Oh, no. Dr. Michalos.
What the heck is going on?
We're in mourning. We're all in mourning.
I mean, everybody told us, make sure you eat dark chocolate. It's good for you.
And don't eat milk chocolate.
Chocolate increases my happiness levels, too. And July 31st, a study published in the Frontiers of Nutrition found heavy metals like lead and cadmium and arsenic. And the study was done with 72 different brands. We're not going to mention any brands at George Washington University and consumerlab.com if our listeners want to learn more about it. And basically,
can we get a copy? If we have a copy of it, we'll put it on our website so all the WABC listeners. So send it to me, and I'll give it to Rich Radaballi. He'll put it on the website.
Pregnant women and children have to be careful because lead can cause cognitive decline, fine motor skills, and attention disorders. And cadmium can cause heart plaques and blood pressure and kidney damage. And nobody thinks of that. Most doctors never check those levels unless you go to an integrative medicine specialist.
Where do we get good chocolate?
Well, you'd have to go on to the study there because I don't want to mention brands, but I'll send you the link, and our listeners can go to the WABC website where they can learn more about living long, staying healthy, and live long and prosper.
Well, Dr. Peter Michalos, live long and prosper. Thank you for coming on, and we'll put that report on the website so our listeners know what chocolate can I eat.
He always has the best info. Always does.
Thanks for getting the truth out on Katz and Cosby every night.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Now, let's go to a break, and when we come back, we have Greg Jarrett.
Yep, Fox
and what is
News.
he going to talk about, Rita?
Fox News legal analyst. He is going to talk about this decision from the New York Appeals Court against Trump, and also the plea deal for the 9/11 mastermind, and also what Trump may have said to the FBI. It's his first time being interviewed since that shooting. Lots of stuff coming up.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. And big stuff coming down, legal stuff, and also a plea deal for the 9/11 mastermind. Joining us now is Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Greg, you wrote a column about this. I can't believe that they cut a deal with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was the right-hand guy to Osama bin Laden. To me, the evidence was clear as day, he and the others, and now they get to escape the death penalty. If there's ever a case with the death penalty, isn't it this one?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this guy confessed to the point where he bragged about his heinous deeds as the architect of the 9/11 attacks, killing, 3,000 people. He said, I was responsible for the 9/11 Operation A to Z. And beyond that, there was a mountain of evidence that supported conviction and the death penalty. But the government over 21 years our government has incessantly blundered. There's been a revolving door of lackluster judges, inept prosecutors. A decade ago, I wrote a column describing the incompetent handling of what was essentially a straightforward, easy case of criminal charges. But Barack Obama stepped in at one point in time, and he really mucked up the works because he decided to drop all charges and bring the case in federal court. And, of course, the public condemnation was deafening. Congress took action and forced him to reverse course. So that caused inordinate delays. And then, of course, unscrupulous defense attorneys, filed motion after motion, appeal after appeal. There were so many prosecutors and judges that came in and out of the case. You need a calculator to keep track. And now the Biden administration has thrown in the towel. And Joe Biden, oh, gosh, I had nothing to do with this. Don't believe it. He had vowed to close down Gitmo. To do that, he had to give a sweetheart deal to these despicable terrorists, and he did it.
Yeah, it is really crazy. Judge Weinberg.
So that's the question I was going to ask you, Greg. What does the United States of America and the people of the United States get out of this deal, other than being snookered?
They get absolutely nothing. And, the people I feel for, and I know some of them, are the long-suffering family members of the 3,000 victims. They expected justice, they deserve justice, and they are angry and disappointed in their own government's craven surrender.
So it's one more deal that Biden does for political purpose by misusing the justice system.
Absolutely. And he doesn't even have the courage of his convictions to admit it. Instead, he's saying, oh, gosh, this was the military tribunal, and it's handled by the Department of Defense. I didn't even know it. Baloney. He knew all about it. He directed it. He insisted on it to fulfill a campaign promise and, to try to troll for more votes in that way.
Ed Cox.
And the worst that he did was when he wanted to announce on the 20th anniversary of 9/11 that he got all our troops out of Afghanistan. And for that shallow political reason, he pulled the troops out despite all the advice that he got from the military and from his own staff, simply for that cheap political point.
Yeah, and then, of course, he famously couldn't even remember that he had received adverse advice. People finally stepped forward and said, yeah, we told him not to do it. It was going to be a total mess. But Biden, in his senescence, couldn't remember that he had been told not to do it. But, this is the problem with a senile president who's not in control. It is a national security risk to all Americans.
And the consequences are terrible. Russia invasion Ukraine. I mean, the weakness, what it showed, America is still suffering from it.
Right, exactly. And, that also emboldened Iran to, launch through Hamas and Hezbollah their attacks, as heinous as they were, on innocent Israeli citizens. So, this is a president who long ago, lost control of his own presidency. I don't know who the shadow president is. It's probably a committee of progressives that are running things, and they periodically trot him out to read a teleprompter that they've written for him, and he has trouble doing that.
I want to ask you about some other news, Greg, that just came down, that this New York appeals court has rejected Trump's appeal to lift the gag order that's on, the New York case. The case is over. We're like smack in the heart of election season. And a New York appeals court says, no, the gag order still has to stay in effect, stay in place through the sentencing, which is in September. Who knows if that gets pushed down? I mean, this is ridiculous. The case is done. How is this not election interference?
It's both election interference and an egregious violation of the First Amendment right to free speech, especially a presidential candidate who's been targeted with specious lawfare brought by acolytes of Joe Biden and Biden's own Department of Justice. He has every right to defend himself in the court of public opinion. And, you know, this just demonstrates to me how biased politically and crooked the New York court system is.
And Greg,
you know, I would hope that federal judges would step in and say this is fundamentally unconstitutional.
And what people seem to forget, and you've pointed this out on numerous occasions, there's two parts to the First Amendment. It's not only Trump's right to speak, but your right and my right and Rita's right and Ed Cox's right and John Caspi's right and everybody else's right to hear. And that's being denied us.
It is for, you know, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of Americans. And I pointed out ad nauseum all the time that it's not just his right that's being violated. It's every American's right who has a right to listen to speech they may want to hear in a contested, important presidential election.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that it's continuing. By the way, I don't know if you saw this yesterday. We were talking about this earlier, that when he went before the National Association of Black Journalists, President Trump, the interviewer was just, first of all, didn't even say hello to him and just went right for it. And then one of the things she brought up was, she said, you know, obviously you're racist because look essentially at the way you've attacked some of the prosecutors who are African American against you, as if it's the color of their skin. It was shocking, Greg. I mean, as opposed to saying, wait a minute, no, he's upset that he's getting railroaded.
No, it was the meritless nature of the charges against him that were trumped up against Trump. You know, he at least had the courage to appear before the black journalists, which Kamala Harris has as yet to do. Now, she may do it remotely, but she didn't have the courage to show up herself. I'll give props to Trump for appearing knowingly in front of a hostile crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely, the crowd, Ed was even saying the crowd was cheering him on, ultimately even swayed the crowd.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Thank you,
Greg.
Greg.
We love having you on. Thank you so much, Greg Jarrett. Thank you.
What do we all stand for?
Truth, justice, and the American way.
God bless America.
Janine Pirro here for Colonial Metals Group. Colonial Metals Group helps Americans protect their future with the most trusted store of wealth in human history, physical gold and silver. If you're retiring or retired, go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Pirro for your free Janine Pirro Colonial Metals Group Retirement Protection Kit, or call 800-965-8004. 800-965-8004 now to receive a free home safe and up to $7,500 in free silver.